always do what makes you the happiest. 3 reasons why you should always do what makes you the happiest. When I was still working for a boss, actually, I've been like in the IT for 2 decades. I, I loved being in the IT. It was nice to learn a lot of things, and especially the first time I started out doing going to all these different companies. You know, the way they did it is like I was the one junior, then there was someone else who was senior, and they would train me on the job. And I got to see so many different companies. Of course, a lot of companies were dealing with lack of staff due to reorganizations or because of other reasons. And we quickly, had to pick up, learn all that stuff. And because I used to work like different shifts, 24/7 shifts, not 24 hours, but sometimes I had to start 7 in the morning, other times 11 at night, or 3 at night, or 5 in the afternoon. Um, and also in the weekends and during the holidays, I got to know people quite well. And sometimes we were really busy, and sometimes it was, everything was just going the way it was, especially when this was about keeping the network going, or getting jobs done. So people would get interest, or, transfers were made when it came to bookings. I started out primarily in the financial world. And of course, I learned all the things that I wasn't supposed to learn, like underneath the tiles in a computer room, you can really store wine bottles really well because they keep cool because the air is blowing underneath the tiles. I'm not sure if it still is that way nowadays, but I've seen all the things I'm not supposed to see. And no, I'm not going to say I did all the things I'm not supposed to do, because that's not the case. I mean, after all, I was a representative going places, but yeah, it was nice. And especially those first 7 years, those were very cool years. Um, but at some point, I needed to make a switch because they wanted me to do things I couldn't do. And that's basically all the time why I left certain companies. And what happens is when they make you do stuff you don't want to do or you don't believe you can do, it robs you of all your energy because it keeps going on and on and on and on in your mind. So my first burnout, I still remember this. The the training, I love communicating with people. Let's start with that part. And I loved getting people to understand the framework that I was teaching, and especially having them tell their examples and their stories, making them heard basically, which why I got an invitation for the next company where I started working at, because they knew I could actually make a connection with people. And this was an ongoing story. Wherever I went to do the job I did, I was working with people. I either worked with the suppliers or I worked with the clients, and usually I would go talk to them, and I would want to know, okay, who are you? What are you doing? Why do you need what you need? And how can I express this to other people? So it was kind of cool to be doing all that stuff. So what happened several times, and the first time wasn't actually that bad. Yes, I got a burnout, which was bad. And the reason was I had to drive a lot, and I was meeting new people like every 2 days. I got a new group from, well, about 12, 14 people. And especially the driving in combination with new people, that's what got to me. And it was, I got up like at 5 in the morning. I was already busy, like, okay, what am I going to do? Then I would be driving there During the break, there was no break because people would always be talking to me. Afterwards, still the same story. Then I would get in a traffic jam and, well, do that 5 times a day, a week. And, well, that didn't work for me. It was too much. And now I know, with what I know nowadays, that, I need my breaks, I need my rest. But that's not the reason why I quit it altogether. The reason why I quit it was at some point there would always be some sort of reorganization somewhere. And it meant that we had to be more efficient with less people. Stockholders would say, yeah, we need to cut down on costs. On where CEOs would be happy with me, and I knew they were, and suppliers would be happy with me, and customers would be happy with me. That's not what they cared about. Well, they should do it, and CEOs did, of course. But the ones who had to work with me, especially when I would have a new manager, they didn't understand that concept, or maybe they did, and they were like sort of beaten down by everything that had happened in all those years. And they didn't care anymore as long as I fit the structure. Well, if you have seen me several times, or if you are looking at me right now, I do not fit the structure. I just don't. And all the time, I worked with clients and with suppliers, I always got the odd ones out. That was one of the reasons why I was asked to start working at IBM, because I was one of those few, and I was still in my 20s back then, late 20s, but I was in my 20s. He was capable of actually entertaining the guys. And I don't mean entertain as in telling them some story which didn't make sense, but I meant they had to learn something, a new structure. They had to adapt it. They had to embrace it. And what I would do is, because I had been working in all those different companies as a representative, and I would know their stories. I did know what it meant if a network didn't function anymore, and all the banks out there and all the people out there weren't able, well, to get cash from the wall. Of course, nowadays we all do things electronically, but back then we were still depending on, transfers being made, and interest getting there in time. And when you would go to an office and it wouldn't work, that was, of course, that was havoc. So, and mayhem. So yeah, that was kind of cool. And because they understood the way it worked, and I have to say, and I don't know if you noticed, but right now, nowadays, 3 gigabytes, it's just like this thumbnail. That's all. You put it in the computer, in the USB slot, and that's it. But back in the days, it was like longer than 5 times my arms probably combined. It was like a whole room, and it was water cooled, and it was so much fun. And I loved seeing all that stuff, and especially when things were not going the way they should, and there was massive interruption, hardware that didn't function. I was at my best. I love those moments. It's the way it is. And so the guys from IBM, they basically loved me. And later on, when I started working for the people on the road, same story. They loved me because I could understand what was going on in their mind. I understood their world. Here's the thing. The moment that we are talking about reorganizations, and I don't know if you've ever encountered reorganizations, but usually they say, okay, this is the time you've got, this is what you need to do, and I don't care how you do it as long as you get it done. And especially when they come up with this structure and it doesn't fit what you know is best for the company, that's a huge problem. Hence why the CEOs left me, but the managers on the floor didn't. And, you know, at some point I was capable of doing whatever needed to do. But, you know, there has to be a fitting job, you know, and as much as CEOs may love me, if I don't do the, if there is no place where they can put me to work where I function best, that's going to be a problem. So in the end, I said, you know, I'm done with people wanting me to do what it is, and you know, say especially at the last bit, you know, I remember um, all the things I did, you know, like driving to the clients, talking to them. And those guys, they loved it. The people from the traffic centers loved it. The suppliers loved it. And, you know, I got away with certain things which might have cost tens of thousands, and vice versa too, because we would always come to some sort of compromise or agreement, because I wanted to see what's really bothering you. And as I said, maintenance on the road is not sexy, but it is important to be able to get us driving on the road. And yeah, and I remember, you know, the last night I was actually working in a tunnel. Well, I wasn't working, I was just visiting it. And it was actually the sad thing that it was the last day I worked for the company that I got to do the really cool stuff. Anyway, if you cannot do what you want to do, it's going to cost you energy. I've had several burnouts, starting the first time when I had to work like 5 days a week for people, you know, 14 people in a class, and doing it every day. So every 2 days I had another group, and especially combined with the long driving hours and it going on in my mind, because that's what it was. When you don't feel comfortable with what you're doing, or you have to make long days and you don't get a break, then things just keep going on in your mind, and you can't turn it off anymore. And that was my problem, because I got up at 5, I took a shower, I started driving, I came back at home at 8, still had to have dinner. Well, I can tell you at some point there was a television somewhere and there was a glass of Bailey's somewhere, Bailey's on the rocks. Well, I don't drink any alcohol, but back then I liked, you know, the occasional taste. I was trying a little bit. It was my age, and other people were doing the same thing. So, you know, experimenting with the whole lot. But then 3 Baileys, 5 Baileys, you know, and what basically gave the way was I was getting really on edge, and I got these really emotional outbursts. And that was the first time I learned, like, it's so important to take a break and also set your boundaries. So today, again, is about always do what makes you happiest. So why am I talking about this? Because if you want to do something, it's so important that you have the energy to do it. So maybe I could have done it, still not 5 days a week and all the time without any break in between, if I would have gotten some satisfaction out of it. But knowing I didn't do what I could do and what I needed to do took away all that satisfaction. So I wasn't happy anymore. And it didn't give me the energy, because I was basically sulking all the time and upset with people because they didn't do what they needed to do. And then I needed to do what they should have been doing. And oh, well, here comes the blame game. um, and you know, certain things I just couldn't do. But how much can one do when you're being pressured? And that's one of those things. So I know in every country there are different working days and different numbers of holidays and all that stuff. So back in the days when I started working, we would work 40 hours a week. So that's 5 days, 8 hours plus breaks, because breaks didn't count as hours. I've worked for companies where I actually had to punch the clock. And then there were companies where I didn't have to, as long as the thing got done. And of course, I like the latter the best. And so when, it is the thing, I've got a brain fog every now and then, and you're experiencing it right now. So not being able what I wanted to do, knew what to be best, that really cost me. It didn't make me happy. I couldn't rebuild my energy anymore. Like I said, I needed to learn to stand my ground, and I would recognize it quicker and quicker. And usually, a problem started to exist the moment that I would get a new manager. And like I said, at first we would work 40 hours a week, then later we in the Netherlands would have 30 hours working weeks. And I started to diminish it like 4 days a week and then 3 days a week. And that was doable. I could do my own stuff, coach people in between, and that was good. And then at some point they started changing all this stuff, with their meetings. And when I would tell my story, they basically, they didn't want to hear it. Why? Because I always had the clients who were the odd ones out. So they basically wanted me to fit in their structure, but at the same time, they weren't interested in what I was doing, except when you were a different party at that same company. Because within 3 months at the last company, they knew who I was. Because I had registered it all. I knew all the contracts which were out there, because I was the contract manager. And I had visited all the traffic centers, the suppliers, because I needed to know what was going on. And I loved it. Thank you, Anna. Thank you. And, at some point I would be involved with projects and they would invite me because I would know what they were talking about. And I knew the pitfalls, and I knew the things which were going the way it should. And I felt like I was the one talking for the people from the traffic centers, but also for the suppliers, because I knew what they were running into against. And that really got me places, because I remember that my predecessors, when they were doing the balance sheets, they would like, you forgot this, you weren't there on time, and we're going to have you pay fine. And it was different. So we would, talk about it. Yes, no, why. And, every once in a while I would just forget about it. And then they say, oh, remember, you still need to finance. Oh, thank you, because it's like you give with one hand and then you get with the other one. And that was lovely. And right until the last day, I really loved doing what I did. Just not the way I was forced to do it. And of course I didn't, because that's not me. So the first reason probably is without energy, you cannot do whatever it is you are facing. And again, it could be that you get energy not just from working out, but also from, let's take a lot of people who are posting nowadays on Instagram, who have their pages on Instagram and they post pictures on there. And I can tell you, I'm friends with a number of those. And the way people respond to them posting, it's wonderful. And the love that they get back. And by the way, I became friends with a number of those who actually are looking at those pages. That's immensely rewarding. So it doesn't have to be that you get all this energy on the job, as long as it's at least not costing you all this energy and you're allowed to take breaks. And that's the thing. It's between what's efficient and what's not. Well, I dare say it's not efficient to have you working 8 hours at a stretch, just with some breaks for lunch and maybe coffee and tea. Um, sometimes you need to just think about what it is you want to do, go outside, go for a walk, talk to other people. And that's basically what I started doing. And, if it came to punching the clock, I would be in the building or I would walk outside. But nobody could say anything about it because I was always, talking to people. And that worked. And because I was talking to people, which on the one hand was relaxing for me, but on the other hand, I got all the information I needed. I got to know the people, and which helped me to get things done. And that's basically how I've been working ever since I started in the whole IT. I still see myself sitting there during the weekends. And well, I'll tell you a little secret. I'm not very fond of flames. So I like sitting near a bonfire. I truly love it. But when it comes to lighting the stove, I don't like to use a match and use the stove. So one of those guys out there actually bought me a gas lighter, and it's the best thing I ever had because it put this much distance between me and the fire. Great. So at some point, when they would have meetings and the machine to get coffee was, let's say, near the cantina, and sometimes people would actually have meetings over there. I would go there, I would get myself a coffee, and then I would make another coffee for someone else. And then I would just put it down there on the table. And people were like, what's happening? And we would have so much fun because during the weekends, we would be talking so much, getting to know one another better, getting to know one's life better, but also what was important for the job. And that created bonds, and that also can give you a lot of energy, the reaching out to people and talking to people. Like Anna right now, she's here live, she's watching me, and I know that I haven't read everything she said prior to this live. But I also know that she's probably listening in, and if she were to give a comment, I would get into it, and she knows I do. And she also knows that outside of the live, I would do the same. And that's fun. And as for the other people, creating those pages, yeah, you can get, really good relationships with the people. So just to get back, and there would be like this one woman, and she had this cash machine, and the moment that she would call, I would know who she was, I would know what her problem was, and that made it so much easier. That was when I was working at the service desk. And sometimes when we had nothing to do, I would talk a little bit longer. But it worked, and people started asking for me just because of it. But at the same time, because I would get in that, really, into what was going on, I would quickly know the answer too. So that was the good thing. So energy from whatever it is you are doing, and especially who you are working with, that's so important. We spend more hours a day at work working with people than we see our loved ones at home. Let's face it, that's the way it is. Of course, with COVID, a lot has changed, and we started working from home again. Not again, we started working from home. And so over here, a lot has been turned back. Um, and I guess it's good that on some hand, on one level you want to talk to your colleagues, be there, and on the other one, it's nice to be able to take a break, get your own cup of coffee, the way you like it, and get your things done. And there are actually places out there who make sure that, do you need your laundry done? Yeah, or you can just give it to us, and we'll make sure that it's done. And that's a whole different ball game. So, um, without energy, you cannot deal with whatever it is you are facing. And with some form of energy, you can battle whatever it is you get thrown at you. Um, and then the second one, if you are happy, you get endorphins and you feel better. And again, whatever you are dealing with is easier to handle. So it's not just um, about dealing with stuff and getting energy from whatever you're doing. It's also about having so there's maybe not getting the energy from whatever you're doing, but you have the energy because you are doing other things. And there's, of course, the energy you get from doing whatever it is because you feel it's for your life purpose and you were meant to do it. And that really feels good. So there are a couple of things that can make you can help you out. And just to go back to those Facebook pages, if Joe were to be here, I know that she would say something to me about it. Um, she she lost her husband to COVID 2 years ago, and I know she started her page because she needed something to focus on, something which made her happy. So this wasn't basically about her doing a job that she didn't like. This was about handling her grief in a way that she could just channel everything what was going on. And then when people started saying, like, you're a fraud, which she of course isn't, but she pointed out that other people were scam artists. And for those who weren't, they probably were jealous because she had so many people. Um, she couldn't handle the criticism, and that's hard. And she was about to quit. So I talked to her and said, "You can't do that. You can quit." Unfortunately, she's still there going on. But it's one of the reasons that, so much has happened to her lately that um, we decided that whenever she feels like it, she's here as a guest. And well, today she doesn't. So Anna says, I think I am lucky in my job. I have great coworkers and I talk with them all the time and we have coffee together. That makes me happy, sometimes more than my life on weekends. Yes, Anna, and that's exactly what I was talking about. You if you have a chance to interact with your colleagues, talk about work, but also talk about life, and you form a really great team together, and you can depend on one another. That gives such a bond. It creates such a huge relationship. And I still have friends, from back in the days, basically from all the companies I worked at. I still have people I see, and some places more than others. But there are hardly any jobs I think back to where I don't have friends. And it's the colleagues, which, I mean, you basically normally you experience the same things. And especially talking about reorganizations, seeing what it did to the people and talking to them, and facing struggle and fear of, okay, what if I don't have a job anymore? That were things that we did together. And also forming a team to talk to managers like this needs to change. That forms a bond. So, yeah. Um, and yeah, so it's so important to be able to talk with your colleagues, whether again it's about work, especially nowadays when you're thrown into a job or into something new. It's and being able to talk to the seniors, or maybe, like, do you have any suggestions? Do you have any ideas what we can do? That helps so much, but it also creates that bond. It makes you grow together, because you can rely on one another. also in the difficult times. And yes, having coffee together, it's so great and so important to just have some downtime, and especially in the Netherlands, when it's hot outside, or at least it's nice outside and there's light during the day, that's usually when we work. So we get up at when it's still dark, and we get back when it's still dark, especially in the winter. And just sitting outside and actually seeing some daylight, and then sitting there together, that counts for a lot. And yeah, and like I said, you probably know more about people because you see them like every day. And the thing is, when you get home, who do you talk to? Do you talk to your spouse? Do you come home at the same time? Or have you already wind down, started prepping food, and then the other one comes in, and then maybe they want to share their story? But the moment of downtime can be totally different. And I know that was one of the things that I was dealing with at some point. I my way of coping was when I would drive home, I would get on the phone. That, of course, wasn't always convenient for the other one who was still working. And then when he got home, I basically had already wind down, and I was usually in the midst of something, doing something. So I didn't have the interest, and by the time I did, then the other one was done. So it was, and that's how you learn to deal with one another, how you learn to build that relationship. But yes, seeing one another nonstop, like every day, and you get to know the people quite well. So, um, okay, well, what I said, maybe you need to do other stuff to help you deal and cope with whatever life throws at you. And, well, you don't want to quit doing it. And last but not least, purpose. And I already mentioned this. And one of the things, and that's probably why I'm talking rather enthusiastically about my jobs, is I knew what I was doing and what I was doing it for. And that was what made it rewarding, getting like 9 different parties, 15 people in a day in a room, and getting them to talk to one another instead of them saying, no, this one has to do it, no, the other one has to do it. And I was like, oh, you're blaming all the other one, and you're saying it's not my responsibility. You know what, let's gather all of you in one room, and now we're going to talk about it, and we're not going to leave this room until we found a solution. And people loved it, and it was unheard of, but that's what I did. And I didn't mind driving those places. And it was working time anyway. So I was like, yeah, sure, whatever you want. And those are the things that I learned from the previous jobs I've had, because it's not okay to be driving like 3 hours to get to a job and then 3 hours back and not get paid for it. It does cost you your energy. And if, of course, you have chosen to work at a certain location, and then from there on, time is being calculated, that's a different story. But back then I wasn't that smart. I think they call it street smart, actually. And so that's when we get back to the purpose and to the why. And at some point, I was having my own company, and then so usually I would work in the evening with my own clients, or in the weekends, or those other 2 days that I didn't work at the office. Um, Besides the weekend, of course. And I would really love that. It was, I got to work with people really closely. And, if I would run into them, I would still know the talks we have had. And they don't disappear anymore, except maybe for where they went on the holidays. Those are the things I completely forget, because that's irrelevant. What's relevant is what happened on during those holidays. That's what I remember. And so it's all about purpose and the why. And here's the thing, it's not always easy. And I have to admit, one of the perks of working for an employer or boss was I was focused, fixated on what needed to be done. There were no distractions. There was no Facebook to look at, there was no Instagram to look at, Netflix, whatever it is you want to talk about. It was like, oh yeah, this is what needs to be done. I've got so many hours to do it, so let's go for it. And of course, I would still talk to other people if I needed some downtime. But I was efficient, and in the hours I would be working, I would do a lot. And when I started working for myself, at first I got all these people word to mouth. And so those were local people. And it was way easier because one told the other one and then they told the next one. And people knew I would really want to go where I needed to go and really help them out. So that's how I got new people. But now I'm doing, of course, other stuff. Like doing these lives right now, teaching people, training people, doing like it's not only just the lives 2 times a week, it's also motivating people by getting those quotes out there. It's also making people aware, like, hey, I can be there like in a group setting for you monthly, and we can get to talk, and I can get to coach you like twice a week, and we do it together. If you want to, you can get on that hot seat. Whatever you say there is safe, and I'll make you get there wherever it is you want to go. But doing it yourself, because, well, some of us out there have fixed hours, but most of us are so passionate about what it is we're doing, we can do it basically 24/7. Well, except for when we sleep, of course. And usually when I go out, and I go out on my own to have, whether it is because I'm walking to the restaurant here nearby, which is under a mile, it's good exercise. I train my muscles and my joints to do whatever it is that needs to be done. But at that same time, when I arrived there, of course, I know the people, the staff, that's me. I always talk to people, ask how they're doing. But I also get to work, I usually have my notebook with me, I have pencil, I start writing things down. And nowadays, with the smartphones being that big, I don't really need my iPad anymore in order to do stuff and to contact them. And that's one of the reasons why I never felt alone during COVID, except for when I was quarantined and we literally couldn't go out because of curfew. So getting back to the purpose and what gives us that reason to go for it. So doing those shows, I learned, especially when it comes to speaking out and setting those boundaries, that people, they get something from it and they can go on. And I got to know different people, and I gave them purpose to continue. And also they know when and where to find me, which is kind of fun too. But it's like, okay, when am I doing what, and putting that structure in place. That's and that's why it's so important to work with other people, form some sort of family, so you can actually go there and do what needs to be done. And like I said, that's sometimes a bit hard. So you can get the purpose, you can have your energy, but still. So all those things combined, make sure that whatever it is that you need to be doing, and especially and need to be doing to get the energy you so desperately need, please do it. And if you need to set boundaries in order to be able to do it, then please do it. think about what it is you need. And don't give in to, let's call them the bullies out there. You dictate whatever it is you need to do, whether it is because they are in charge or whether it is because they want to. And let's face it, there are a lot of people out there who just go after you for no good reason whatsoever. But here's the thing, when you do get back and you do get to do whatever it is you love to do, I can tell you, people will welcome you with open arms. And that's something you need to consider too. So, here was my take on 3 reasons why you should always do what you love to do the most, and why it's so important to always do what makes you the happiest and gives you the energy. Yeah, I think that's it for now. And I'll see you again next week. Hopefully with Joe next time. I'm not sure about that. If you do have questions, please post them, leave a comment. And remember, like I said, I do coaching. I do it one-on-one. I also do group coaching. So reach out to me. Either leave a comment or go to chikaracc.com, start to speak out now. And in case you say, oh my God, chikaracc.com, what are you talking about? Well, this is Chikara. That's the symbol for strength. And the CC, yeah, that's a little secret, but confidence and courage is in there. And Start to Speak Out Now is about you learning to speak for yourself. And by the way, that's a free course. But if you want to start working with me straight away, just let me know. That's why I'm here. I'm here so you can get a voice. You can learn to speak up. And you can also learn to speak out if you don't agree with people, but you know it's important to get doing what you do. And also, I'm always to be found on Instagram